Welcome to My Healing is Your Healing, a podcast for the woman who is ready to stop performing and reclaim her voice. I'm your host, Celeste, and around here, we don't do surface level. We go deep. Each week, we'll explore concepts like self-discovery, radical honesty, and the kind of healing that rewrites your story from the inside out. This is a space for truth-telling, for remembering who you are, and for coming home to yourself, louder, braver, and more radiant than ever. So come as you are, and let's do this together. Let's begin. Welcome back to My Healing is Your Healing. I'm your host, Celeste. This episode is for the high-achieving woman who looks like she's holding it all together. But behind the scenes, she's overthinking everything. She's stuck in a loop of proving, of pleasing, of performing until she can't anymore. And I bet a lot of you know what that life looks like because I've lived it too. Your calendar is packed from 5 a.m. to 8 p.m. with workouts, meetings, deadlines, errands, carpool, and expectations. And when the day is done, you're still not done. You're scrolling or overeating, binge watching shows you're not even enjoying, drinking wine just to feel something. And your nervous system is fried. Your brain feels like it's on fire. And when your head hits the pillow, you can't sleep. Or maybe you do, but you wake up wired or groggy or filled with dread only to do it again. Survival mode isn't always dramatic. It's quiet. It's functional. It's praised. It's living for the next milestone, the next event, the next break. It's just trying to get to Friday or the end of the quarter or when the kids are back in school or when the season finally passes. But here's the thing. When you're in survival mode, your brain isn't dreaming. It's not creating. It's not trusting. It's not leading you towards your future self. It's just trying to keep you alive. You're not thinking about the life that you want to live. You're thinking about how to just get through the day. And that might look like saying yes to everything when everything in you wants to say no. It might mean avoiding looking in the mirror, not just because of how you look, but because you don't even recognize who you've become. You're moving through life like a ghost, disconnected from your own voice and unsure how to trust it again. Maybe survival mode is crying in your car on your lunch break, wiping your tears so you can walk back in like nothing happened. Maybe it's getting to the end of the day with everything checked off your list and still feeling like you failed. You dread your weekends, not because you're busy, but because you don't know how to rest without guilt. You stay in the job, the relationship, the rhythm of the life that you've outgrown. Because even though it's not working, the idea of changing it feels too big, too scary. And you tell yourself, this is fine, it's just for a season. But deep down, there's a voice that keeps whispering something is not right. And instead of listening, you gaslight yourself. You scroll, you pour another glass of wine, you tell yourself to just be grateful. And maybe the hardest part is knowing that the people around you love the version of you that performs. But you're not sure if they'd stay if you stopped. You wait for things to get better, for someone to notice, for permission. But no one's coming to save you. And something inside you already knows that. And that's exactly what we're going to talk about today. I'm sitting down with emotional safety coach Nina Lite to talk about what it really feels like to fall apart behind the scenes and what it takes to rebuild a life that doesn't just look good, but finally feels safe, calm, and aligned. This episode is for the woman who's hit her version of rock bottom. Not necessarily the dramatic collapse, but the quiet breaking point. The day she realizes, I don't even know who I am anymore. We're going to explore what survival looks like from the inside, how it disconnects us from our bodies, from our worth, our ability to choose what we actually want, and how to slowly and gently come back home to yourself. One breath, one truth, one aligned choice at a time. If you have ever asked yourself, why do I feel stuck even though I've done everything right? Or how do I start trusting myself again? Am I broken or am I just burned out? Then this conversation is for you. Because the truth is, you are not broken. You're just exhausted from holding yourself together for far too long. And starting over does not require a total demolition of your life. It means making aligned decisions from a place of calm, clarity, and care. So if you're ready to stop outsourcing your worth and start rebuilding from within, this one is for you. Let's get into it. All right. Welcome, Nina. So glad to have you. How are you?
Thanks, I'm great. How about you?
Excellent. I'm really excited to dig in, but first I'm going to tell our listeners just a little bit about you. All right. Nina is an emotional safety coach working with high achieving women who feel stuck in lives that they outgrew, but they're too scared to change. She helps them stop second guessing themselves and start trusting their own decisions again. Her unique approach blends practical tools with nervous system work, so change feels safe, not overwhelming. Are you ready to dig in?
Yeah, absolutely. Hit me with questions.
Amazing. All right. So you gave me a little bit about yourself and I perused your website a little bit, and you said that your life looked great from the outside, but felt all kinds of wrong on the inside. Can you take us to what that chapter looked like?
Yeah, so if we go back into my 20s, maybe I should start by saying that I'm an expat. I've been living abroad for over 20 years. I've lived in multiple countries, and finally I moved to Poland, which is where I thought, okay, that's it, settling down, right? So I had a partner. It was looking good, stable, living together. I had a job in IT, climbing up the ladder. I was working out. I looked really good. And to anyone looking into this, I think a lot of people were actually kind of jealous of me. And to people from the outside, it kind of looked like, well, she's kind of hitting all the milestones, right? So, yeah. But to me, that's not necessarily how it felt like. And there was a slow kind of decline, right, into feeling stuck in a life that I created. And it
Mm-hmm.
was own doing, right? So it's kind of starting to feel trapped in a cage. Because relationships, even when they look good on paper, it doesn't necessarily feel good. But at that age, I also didn't have the experience to know how is it supposed to feel? Is that what being an adult looks like? And also, I didn't know what the hell I was gonna do with myself. So yeah, it looked good on paper, right? But inside, I was kind of crumbling. Yeah,
That's
yeah,
so funny that you say that. Like, we all have this idea of what our life is supposed to look like because society tells us or our family tells us what it is. And then you don't know exactly how it's supposed to feel on the inside. You just say, hey, that looks like a cool life. I want that. What did it actually feel like to you in those moments when you were in a cage?
So I often kind of dreamed about moving somewhere else. And, in my head, I'd build this whole fantasy of, well, maybe Poland's not really doing it for me and I just don't fit in. And I'm somehow going to convince my partner to just drop everything and we're going to move. But then, do I really want to go through the whole experience again of being an expat, of integrating, learning another language? Sure, it's exciting, but we all know you got the rose colored glasses on first, and then it hits you, right? The whole integration and the culture shock and whatever else. So, yeah, in my head, I built this whole fantasy. But I also built another one, which was me and that partner and all the things we're gonna do together and all that wonderful life. But I wasn't really in it. And I think that in a way, I was kind of outlining a path that I wanted for myself. And I was kind of taking another person and molding him into it. That's not to say that I was actually expressing any of that to him, because we would have, you know, gone our separate ways by that point had I said anything. But in my head, I kept thinking, well, he's obviously going to come around to my line of thinking. This is really obvious. This is how it's all going to work out. And I didn't have any kind of plan behind it either. Yeah. Poor coping strategy.
So
Don't.
interesting. Yeah. It's funny you saying that because you like it's all these unspoken expectations that you have of somebody else and not really asking them what they want their life to look like. But that's also what a partnership is, right? Where sometimes you lose your autonomy and you take on all of what that person's life looks like. You know, they make the jokes of the longer that you're with your partner, you start to look like them, right?
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
your life starts to look like theirs too, right? And so that was kind of the trap that I found myself in was me and my ex used to do triathlon and that just became the only thing that we focused on for the like our life and that was the only thing we did together and it became this identity that I didn't even know that I wanted anymore.
Well, that's really interesting you say that because with my ex, we actually both focused into powerlifting, and I was never interested in before. And then I suddenly just started training and training and training. And looking back, I'm kind of thinking, what the hell were you doing? Like, yes, I like to stay in shape, but there was actually no need to go to these lengths. And I actually had some injuries and all these things. And I'm just going, whoa, I just kind of went into this and didn't even consider that, right? So yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah,
Yeah.
what a life. So so many women identify as quote unquote strong, right? And independent, but they feel alone in that pain. What do you want those women to know?
Well, the one thing I want them to know is that you're not alone. But the fact is, when you're going through it, you feel like you're the only person. I can share some of my experience because prior to recording, I was thinking, like, you're going to ask me this. I better have a good answer for you. And what I came up with at the time is that there's this huge pressure to hit certain milestones. And we all actually have our own timeline, but there's a
Mhm.
huge pressure to follow a timeline. And when you don't hit those milestones or something goes wrong, you feel like you failed. You feel like you're a joke. You may feel like everything around you crumbled and you're never going to build again, especially if you're, 30s are a sensitive age for a woman, usually.
Mhm.
And especially if you hit 30 and then you think, oh, everyone around me is popping out kids, getting married, and here I am, the world's biggest loser, and I don't really know what I'm gonna do with my life. And that feels really lonely, especially when your friends around you, so your support network. Especially if you've broken up, that support network is usually a little loose, unless you're very careful about that. So when it's loose, you suddenly feel kind of isolated, and then you're integrating back, but everyone's got the partner and the kids, and you're kind of like, ooh. So if you're going through that right now, I feel you. I really feel your pain, but I also want you to know that you're not going to be here forever. Life is a series of ups and downs, and I used to hate my father for saying that, but it's true. It's never, just going up or just going down. It's a series. And when you've got a series of downs, it can feel terrible. But eventually, you know that you're going to bounce back and it's going to start going up again. So if you're going through it, seek out support. It means build up your network again. Even if you haven't talked to these friends in ages, they're going to accept you back. Unless you've been a dick. Then try not to be one again and mend these friendships, right? But most of the time, people understand that you've been busy with a partner, things have been going on. Share what's been going on with you, reconnect. They're gonna accept you back. You're gonna reconnect. You'll start going out and it's gonna work out eventually. I don't know when that eventually is gonna be, but sometime down the line. I hope that helps.
It's kind of funny, like you all wish for a guarantee that like in 10 days I'm going to be okay or here's the thing that's going to happen next, but you don't ever know, right? And you have to trust yourself, but you also have to know yourself and love yourself enough that when somebody does leave, that you know it's going to be okay. And that's the scary part because a lot of us don't want to reach out to those friends, right? They're like, "Oh, they're going to think I'm weird or they're going to make fun of me for being the oddball now because I'm single and everyone else has this life that they've put together, but you don't know what's going on in their life either. And you don't know if they're happy. So that's what makes it kind of interesting.
Yeah, that's true. Not true. never assume that someone's happy just because they are, putting out reels on Instagram with their kids and their partner. For all you know, they could be very ill and just putting on a facade, and it's their one thing where they feel good, right? So never assume. And when you connect with people, that's another thing. All these stories come out and you can exchange them and you can lift each other up. So that's just another argument
Mhm.
for reconnecting. And also, I didn't mention that, but another thing that's really important when you're feeling that, you're really in this pain, use that pain as a source of growth. I know that can sound abstract, especially if you're really hurting. And I don't mean swallow your pain and just keep going. No, let yourself feel it, but also know that when you're going through things that are very painful, you're going to develop more than you normally would. So look into what is it that I really like, me as a person. Maybe it's something that I really enjoyed when I was a kid. Maybe it's something I've forgotten about. Maybe it's a part of me that I thought is gone. Now I'm kind of resurrecting it. And maybe it's related to an interest. So follow that interest. Even if you're in pain, just take a little step, take a look. Maybe you're going to find something that resonates and you're going to find that pull towards something. And that's going to lift you up as well. So, yeah.
I love that. I've been implementing these self dates lately where I take myself out and go do something that I've never done before. Um, and so the next thing that I want to go do is go to the trampoline park. Do they have those in Poland?
Yeah, I love them. But
Yeah.
get ready, you're going to get so sweaty. Cool. It's
So
so
that's my
cool.
next thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. I'll definitely try it.
Yeah, you're going to love
So,
it.
um, when I was reading on your website, and you also talk about this a little bit when you answered some questions for me, you were talking about this moment where you were standing in front of the mirror having this conversation with yourself, when you were falling apart. What did you see in yourself, and what did you wind up promising yourself?
Yeah, that's a really, really tough moment. But that goes back to the core of my story. And I actually didn't realize there was a thing until I told my story to someone. And I thought, yeah, that's what started the whole thing. So, to give you some context to our listeners, um, my ex left, and it was kind of a very dramatic, unexpected exit. But anyway, my whole little flat was suddenly empty. I had all this empty space in the closets, on the racks, everything I complained about, his stuff being everywhere. Suddenly it was just, this gaping hole. And I just felt completely alone. I'd gotten myself in the trap of, not following up with my friendships. So I just felt no one's going to want to talk to me. How can I even tell anyone this happened? They would have all told me this was going to happen. So, it just starts going in your head. And I thought, right, Nina, no, you got to get on top of this, right? You're strong. So you're going to go to the mirror and you're going to tell yourself, you still have me, right? Babe, you still got me. I think were my exact words. And I looked in the mirror and I looked into her eyes. And first of all, I saw an alien. I didn't know who the hell she was. It was like a shell of a person. Yes, she
Mm-hmm.
looked like me, she moved like me, but her eyes were gone. There wasn't any spark there. I couldn't feel a connection. And when I said those words, she started crying. And I thought, okay, all right, I really messed up, right? I really, really messed up. I broke trust with the one person that's always gonna be with me. And now I need to fix it. So I promised myself that I'm gonna become someone she can count on. Yeah. And this story still makes me really emotional. So if you hear my voice kind of breaking down, that's it. But it's, when you have a moment like that and you really know that you damage trust with yourself, it really hits you. And it's the one driving force behind everything I do because I'm always thinking, oh, hell no, I'm never, ever going down that route. Right? Yeah, it's really powerful when I think about it.
I love that story. And I don't know how many of our listeners have that story too, because I definitely do. And you stare at yourself in the mirror and you're like, I don't know who you are. How did I even get here? Like this person I can't connect with. And you don't even know what you like anymore. You don't know, like, I, I had this moment where I was like, I don't know who Celeste is anymore. And that was the most scary part. So how did you start rebuilding back up from making those promises to yourself in the mirror that night?
Ooh, I went through a lot of mistakes. Well, I figured out, well, obviously, I care about my health and I care about my powerlifting and I care about all these things that I don't necessarily care about that much because the truth is I didn't know myself. But I figured, okay, so I'm just gonna fixate on all of that. I'm gonna spend all my time reconnecting with people and that's just gonna lift me up. No, that totally didn't work. And on top of that, pandemic started. Um, I decided to actually go to my parents. They live abroad. So I knew that the border would close for a while, but we didn't expect that. So on top of everything, I got stuck at 30, I got stuck with my parents, my younger sibling that were still studying, and it was kind of just, this whole wheel of shame, right? Luckily, I still had a job, so I had that going for me. But yeah, you can imagine how that felt like, just quite a blow. I couldn't, go to the gym. I couldn't do any of my usual things. So I was basically just alone with my thoughts. When I wasn't with my family and I was just sitting in my old room, my childhood room, with my furniture from that time and just thinking, how the hell did that happen? But it was actually, it was a terrible time. It was absolutely awful. But at the same time, it really made me think, hey, what do I care about? What matters to me? Who the hell am I? And where am I going from here? Another thing that maybe does not sound like a positive thing was the fact that I started getting massive panic attacks. I'd been getting them for a long time and ignoring them, but it just started going, another one and another one and another one. And it was like a full day of that. So that by
Oh my
itself kind
gosh.
of made me to think, okay, something here's gone wrong. You're completely dysregulated. It's time to figure that out. And so I just threw myself into, different breathing exercises, meditation, guided walks, mindfulness, all these different things. And I just started trying things and seeing, okay, what makes me feel good? What makes me feel bad? What's going on? So when stuff kind of opened up, I did like a Wim Hof thing. We went up in the mountains in our underwear. That was a fun experience as well. But it also made me realize one thing, right? I used to kind of act like a man in a way. Not that I dressed like a man, but I thought that, well,
Masculine
I
energy.
yeah, you could say that I was very in that masculine energy. And I realized at that time that this isn't really me. It served me, right? Because it had maybe a protective action, so it served me, but it was time to find some kind of balance. And so I thought, what did I really like? What did I enjoy when I was a kid? So I really enjoyed public speaking, presentations, teaching. And so I went back into that. And when you start doing something that you really love, you kind of feel, at least for me, I kind of feel like a magnetic pull. Instead of having my energy drained, I kind of feel like I'm getting it back. So even if I'm delivering a workshop to 20 people and I should be really tired, I'm kind of pumped. Of course, some of it is just adrenaline, and it's another story, but it just feels really good. And when you start doing more of these things that feel good and you start regulating your nervous system, you suddenly realize that, hey, I know who I am. Life is feeling pretty good. And yeah, I want to put myself out there. And when I look back at videos from me when I was like 29, 28, and videos of me now, I have a completely different energy. I'm not a different person in the sense that suddenly became someone else. No, but it's just the way I show up. It's really me. It's just who I am in all my natural glory of weirdness, right?
I love this story and this journey that you've been on. It sounds like even though it was a really tough time, it was kind of a blessing in disguise to kind of get stuck back in your old childhood home.
Oh, yeah. But there's always, when I work with clients, and sometimes they really hate me when I kind of invite them to see if there could be anything um, good about something terrible that's happened. Obviously, I'm not doing that in situations that are sensitive, right? And I'm not doing that in the moment when they're going through it. But I do invite them to look back in the past and see, okay, I've had that happened, but because of it, XYZ. Yeah, so blessings in disguise and dodging bullets. Who knows who I would be today if I had not had that happen? And I'm not sure I want to know. It's a really scary thought, you know? I'm sure you
I
do.
have the same, yeah, same thing. Yeah, I'm like, I look back and I'm like, I could be married right now and sitting here in a life that I still don't know who I am. And that sounds absolutely miserable. I would rather go through the growing pains of healing and like all of that pain rather than just being stagnant in something that felt safe.
Yeah, I hear you. I absolutely hear you.
So you said that the breakup wasn't necessarily the issue. It was realizing you had built your life around fear. What does that mean to you?
Yeah, that's that's a thing because a lot of people when I share that story, they say, "Oh, well, breakups are bad." I've had breakups before, bad breakups, not nice breakups, and
Mhm.
none of them hit that same way. And you can romanticize it and say, "Oh, maybe he was the one." Oh, to hell with that. To hell with it. I personally I don't believe in that story. And another thing that I notice is I received a huge blow to my ego, right? And my little
Mhm.
house of cards that I'd built up, my little fantasy that I didn't bother sharing with my partner, and then I didn't bother really sharing with me, just my little fantasy came crumbling down. And that was painful. So why did I have that fantasy, right? Why was I with that person? Why was I doing what I was doing? Well, because I was scared of doing things that I wanted to do, right? I was scared of thinking that
Ooh.
if I really wanna, coach people, teach people, work with people, speak in public, put myself out there, that's really dangerous. Maybe people are gonna laugh at me. They did, by the way. They did. But I thought, maybe I'm gonna get eaten alive online. I'd had this dream that I would be working online, that I would have my clients and a little business, and I just could not go for it. I couldn't go for it. I just squashed that dream. And it's been with me since I'm 18, 19. It was like a huge thing when I was growing up in uni and so on. And I just squashed it down and I said, right, well, let's just do the safe thing. Well, there's a guy, he's a good man and we get along and we have the same interests and we're just gonna live together now. I have this safe job and that's it, right? But why did I do that? I was just too scared to do what I want to do, right? So that's what hurt. Realizing that, right? That's the pain.
And you set yourself back for so long, that fear of success, of having the life that you wanted for yourself. And you're like, nope, this is safe. He is okay. I will live this life. And so what pushed you forward, like in that life? It was it just a dream of, the what could be, or why did you stay?
It's a really good question, but in a way I just thought, well, this is it now. This is my life and I'm just gonna, I'm on my bike and I'm gonna pedal, right? That's just what you do as an adult. You accept things the way they are. And it's not like I didn't think about what else I could do with myself. I had all these ideas. Oh, maybe I could get qualified for this thing or for that thing. But the thing is, I wasn't taking any action. And my partner at the time kept saying, well, why don't you do XYZ? You said you would. And I'm like, yeah, it's so expensive. It's to hell with that. If you want something and you're really into it, you are gonna come up with the money somehow. You're gonna brainstorm, you're gonna think, you're gonna come up with it and you're gonna go for it. But I was just kind of sitting, well, I'm into this now and let's focus on all these things that matter to me right now and just going for that. Yeah. But it was just fear. It was just fear, right? Yeah.
That's crazy how so many of our decisions are fear-based. And it's most of the time it's against doing anything that would move you forward or be successful or have the life that you want to live. You just sit on the couch and you scroll on your phone and you drink wine and that's what you do.
Yeah, it's easy. And I like to say that it feels good until it doesn't. And when it doesn't, it really bites you in the backside. And I consider myself really fortunate, right? I could say, oh, I wasted these years. I don't think so. I think that life was trying to show me like little hints of, hey, hello, wake up. And then just gave me a big slap. And I'm very lucky that I received that slap and I kind of woke up and I said, okay, I don't want to go down that way. But it could have happened later. And the later it happens, it's never too late. It's never too late. But the later it happens, the more of a trap it is that you're gonna think, oh, well, I wasted all this time. Let's just keep on pedaling, right? That's the trap.
Mhm.
So I consider myself really fortunate that I was so young when it happened. Yeah.
That you make so many good points in that, and I have like 10 different things that I even want to say. It's kind of funny, like because you were talking about before with the relationship where you've invested so much time in it that you're like, no, I've invested so much of myself or my time, like I'm just gonna stick with it because that's what I know and I don't want to have to start over again. And I feel like that's the same with any situation, right? Whether it's like starting a new sport when you're in your 30s or a new job, or going back to school, like it's just easier to stay this way.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
so going back to your kind of your fear thing, do you think that it's the same for most women, or why do you think that so many women wait until they hit a rock bottom moment to change?
I can't say for all the women, but I do work with a lot of women that are going through different life transitions. And I'm going to share one thing with you that you're not going to be surprised about, but most women don't see help and they don't really seek out coaching until they hit rock bottom. And rock bottom is usually divorce, serious illness, something really terrible happening in the family. It's usually big things. I'm not saying it's always like that, but usually it comes to that rock bottom feeling. Or the rock bottom comes because they've been going at it so long and they, suddenly find they just can't get up anymore or they just feel completely empty. So why do they keep going? Well, there's lots of reasons, but the way we're socialized, right? The way we are brought up, we're kind of brought up to be the emotional rock, right? We
Mhm.
kind of grow up with a feeling that, we need to stick a thermometer up everyone's butt and check their temperature, and we make sure that everyone around us is fine. This is kind of our role. It's not the case for everyone, but it's the case for loads of women. And specifically, if they're the oldest daughter, that's a big one, right? But another one is
Mhm.
also, you know, the pressure. So I live in Poland, and maybe I see that more than countries that are a little bit less traditional. But getting married here when you're 25 is not unusual, not at all, even younger. So there's this huge pressure that by the time you're 30, because that's for some reason a mark, right, somewhere on the wall.
Mhm.
So by the time that you're 30, you're gonna be married, you're gonna be stable, you're gonna own a house, and you're gonna have kids. And if you've not done all of this, you're going to have all the aunties and the uncles tell you, well, I think you got a good 2 years left in you, but you better be careful. This is kind of the attitude. And I'm sure it's not just here. So there's huge pressure. And sometimes what I see is that it's much easier for someone to just settle, especially if they're surrounded by people that are putting a lot of pressure on them and they deeply care about these people and they want to please them. So in that case, they feel, okay, well, I'm going to eat up everything that I am. I'm just going to push that right back down because the prize, right, that I get, the prize in quotation mark, I want to make sure that you guys heard that, right? So the prize is that these people around me are going to be satisfied. It's not a decision they make on a conscious level, or it's very rare that it's conscious, but it is a
Mhm.
decision that is made on a subconscious level. And that's one of the reasons that they stay, right? We can also then discuss things like trauma bonds and we can discuss things like abusive relationships, but this is one part of the equation, right? I would say that that subconscious desire to fit in and then to please the people around you and to feel like you've hit those markers, those invisible markers, that's the main reason, yeah.
Yeah, we have that same script basically here in the States. You know, you go to college, you meet a man, then you get married, then you have kids, then you retire and you can finally live the life that you want to live, right? Um, but yeah, it's that approval. You're seeking approval from other people, but you're never seeking that approval from yourself. Do I like the life I'm living? Am I enjoying it? Am I completely okay if I don't get married and have children?
Yeah, and those are very hard decisions because at some point it's really difficult to separate yourself from that script that you grew up with, and you really need to
Mhm.
question it, and that can be difficult. For example, a lot of women these days, they would prefer to remain child-free, and when they get vocal about it, there's a huge backlash. There's such a huge backlash from family, from friends, from, the general internet, right? And on the other hand, you've got women who would like to have children, and they would like to have a big family. And there's a huge backlash there too. How dare you, right? How dare you not have kids? How dare you have this many kids, right? Have you heard of birth control? And all these things clash together. Then on top of that, we are spending a lot of time online. And I noticed this as well with friends, with family, and with clients that I deal with. People sometimes, the algorithm shows you what you were at some point interested in. And the more you see it, the more of it pops up. And what I'm seeing is that people fall into these patterns. They get kind of brainwashed by the little TikToks, YouTube shorts, the Instagrams, and whatever. And they kind of just absorb whatever's being sold to them. And so they go with a specific narrative. They think they've kind of freed themselves of the script that came from their family or people surrounding them. They just fall into another, mud pit, essentially. And they start listening to
Mhm.
all that stuff and repeating it back to themselves. But at the end of the day, they still have no idea who they are and what they want. It's pretty scary, actually. Yeah, but it's a really difficult thing. You really need to be willing to look in the mirror. And as I like to say, you probably won't like what you see, but you need to see that, because if you have knots in your hair, you're gonna have to brush them out, right? It's gonna hurt, but once they're out, it's gonna look and feel better, right? Yeah.
Yeah, I really like that. It's funny you say that, like you don't know who you are and you can't even express yourself. I remember when I didn't even have an opinion, like I couldn't voice an opinion about anything because I didn't know how I felt about things. And they were super easy things like, I don't know, like a football team or like this my favorite flavor of ice cream or something like that. So I feel like I could never have conversations with people because I didn't have a voice. But I was forcing myself not to have a voice because I never asked those questions, right? Looking in the mirror and seeing if I'm okay. So it's a really scary thing that I feel like a lot of women probably don't even recognize that they're in that place.
Yeah, it is pretty common. But the worst kind of situation is that you wake up one day and you just tell yourself like, oh well, that's it. I'm done, this is clearly the way that my life is supposed to be because I got to this point with all these things and I'm just going to continue that way. Right? It's too late for me to change anything. And what really scares me the most is when I hear women in their 20s, in their freaking 20s, say that it's too late for them and that they're going to be 30 soon and it's all just downhill for them. That freaks me
This
out.
is who I am. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I want to kind of get into your coaching style and talking about that emotional safety and self-worth and self-trust. So you talk about emotional safety as it being a very core part of your work. What does emotional safety actually feel like?
For example, right now, I'm sharing parts of me and my story that is sensitive, that some parts could be used to hurt me back. It's some parts that are a little bit raw, and maybe not all of the parts that I've fully let go. But I'm comfortable enough, I feel safe to share it. And I know that it's going to be received, and I'm in a safe environment. I also feel safe because I know that whatever happens, right, even if this somehow came back to bite me in the backside, I know that I'm going to be okay. I have the tools and I have the knowledge and I have a support network, a support system that's going to keep me safe. So this is emotional safety. It's being able to, in some way, share our core or share parts of us that are raw, right? Some people say that, some people can describe it that we wear kind of like an armor. Some people say that we wear masks. But the way I like to say it is also that we are just onions, right? Kind of like in Shrek. And with some people, you peel more of that. And with some people, you kind of just cover it all, including the peel, right? And emotional safety can be with other people, but it can also be with yourself. And surprisingly enough, a lot of people don't feel safe with themselves. That was also my case. When I had the moment of I don't trust you, that person in the mirror looking back and thinking, oh, hell no, that person was just, a full onion, right? And we had to
Mhm.
peel back the layers. And right now, I can see her core, right? So I don't mean that if you feel emotionally safe, you're just gonna go up to any random person on the street and just open yourself. It's also knowing who is safe, who will receive that, and what you want to share. That's emotional safety to me. Yeah.
I like that. I like that a lot. So how can someone feel or tell the difference between self-protection and self-abandonment?
That's very difficult because you need a lot of experience to know when you are protecting yourself from something and when you are abandoning yourself in that way. And how can someone who, it's very difficult to tell that if you have not healed or if you are still going through something that's very, very painful. Because in that moment, you are going to jump to the conclusion that, well, obviously, quite obviously, I'm just protecting myself. And maybe in some cases you are. It comes, I would say, when you look back. And if I'm being quite honest, and I think about that question, can someone who is experiencing a transition, maybe it's someone who is self-aware, but they have not gone very deep, that person may not be able to recognize it, right? And it's
Mhm.
only once they look back that they can identify, yeah, that was not self-protection. That was not it at all. But while you're in the thick of it, it's kind of like you're in the woods, right? You don't really see the full picture. It would be really difficult. Yeah.
Yeah, it's that process of recognizing what's happening in the moment and not necessarily having a name for it, but being able to say, "Oh, this is what I feel like right now." And then just taking note and moving on.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but getting to that point where you're self-aware enough, because a lot of people, especially when they come work with me or even just in my private life that I'm experiencing them, they're not able to recognize and verbalize their emotions. And what they will tell you, they feel their feelings. And some people have even done some exercises, but then you push for some detail and they can't identify it at all. Well, they might say, well, I was sad, I was angry, but there are nuances to this. And there are also feelings in the body that we can associate with that. And that's usually one of the things that I have to teach people, right? What am I experiencing in this moment? Where do I feel that? How does that feel? Is it a pressure? Is it, some people can visualize, some people need to feel it. And that's a whole learning curve. Yeah. We don't learn that in school, but maybe we should.
I def Maybe we should, right? There's so many things they don't teach us in school that I feel like how to be an adult and how to make those decisions. But those are really great tools. So, later on, I'm going to talk about how you can work with Nina, but these are some of the tools that you'll wind up getting if you do wind up coaching with her. Okay. So talk to me a little bit how you help women rebuild their self-trust when it's been fractured for so many years.
Right. So if you lose self-trust, you may not even be aware that that's what's happened. I would say that the lucky cases, such as me, have a moment where they realize that's happened and that connection needs to be restored. But some women, and men, of course, but let's focus on women here. They are not even aware that that connection has been severed, right? Like you've shared earlier, you didn't really have that opinion. Some think that they are not allowed to have an opinion. Isn't that scary, right? So fixing self-trust, really, what I call it is a celebration of small wins and keeping receipts. And it
I
depends
like
on where
that.
that person, right? So it depends where that person is. So let's say that this person is, rock bottom, and it's the self-trust is completely not there. And that person, there's this whole hustle thing. You can just, feel the fear and do the thing. This is not gonna work for that person, because that person feels that if she takes a step wrong, it's gonna come crushing down around her, right? So this person
Hmm.
needs to do small, little, tiny things. And these little tiny things, I always say it's important that they are under your capacity, so that you are going to do them, and you are going to, instead of hitting the goal right here, you're gonna overshoot, right? This is important because we are not jumping through hoops here. We are building you up from sometimes from 2 stories below, you know? So
Do you have a couple examples of those little things, like those little goals to shoot for?
it really depends. It really depends, who it is and what we're dealing with, right? But say that it's a person and that person's not been able to lose weight for a really, really long time. And it's somehow affected their relationships, and they are then overeating and so on and so forth. Well, this person then going on a diet and suddenly slimming down and experiencing the body they want. Usually, the brutal approach is going to fail, especially when the self trust has been completely broken, right? But if
Hmm.
that person sees that, okay, today I made a deal with myself, a very small deal. Let's say, Nina, today, so you can look yourself in the eyes because we seek that connection to ourselves. Nina, I love you very, very much. And today, the deal we made is that we're gonna drink 8 glasses of water. Pretty easy, pretty basic, right? And she sees that this day she drank the 8 glasses of water. Or maybe she drank the 8 glasses of water and then she was inspired to go for a walk. And she thinks, whoa, right? Maybe she drank 7 glasses of water, but seven is almost eight.
Hmm.
So she can give herself a round of applause, and she can look at herself in the mirror and she can say, thank you. I know I can count on you. And it's really important to seek that connection. Of course, this is, something that's going to take time, right? And when it comes to
Hmm.
losing weight, and there can be other factors at play. But I didn't have a better example at hand, so I went with this one. Anyway, the point, it's also, with this kind of work, there's a lot of things that I should not be sharing because they're very private. So I'm always just using general examples that cannot be identified, right? But the important thing is in this work that it goes slow, that there is encouragement, and that you seek that connection with yourself. So for some people, just saying I love you to yourself in the mirror is a very foreign feeling. They will avoid it. They can't meet their eyes. So sometimes we just start from that. And there's tears and there's crying and it's difficult. Some people find that very easy and then they move through other things faster. There's no set process that we do with somebody because it depends on where they're at and where they want to be, really. But yeah, slow and gentle.
I like that. I actually started doing that I love you thing last year, and I really do like it a lot because you're just reiterating to yourself that you are important and that you're special. Okay. Before we wrap up today, I have one more question um, before we tell our listeners something special. So how do you define self-worth now? Not the definition that you were necessarily raised with, but the one that you live by now.
Hmm. And that's a really good question. You know what? Self worth to me at the moment. It's knowing that I allow myself to be who I want to be. And that means that if I change my mind about something, I'm allowed to do that. It means that if I want to quit what I'm doing and pivot into something new, I'm allowed to do that. So self worth is knowing that today, right here, whatever happens, I am enough as I am. I have a right to keep on wanting to be better, and I have a right to stay where I am. But the way that I am here today, right now, this is who I am, and I accept that fully. It doesn't mean that I'm not allowed to say in my head, but I wish that I were blah, blah, blah. I was, or, but yesterday I didn't do XYZ. It's okay that I have these thoughts. But the point is that right here, right now, even with these thoughts and even with a pimple I don't like, that's fine. I'm enough and I'm gonna build from here or not. Yeah, it's an odd definition now that I think about it, but it's mine.
I love that. That's a really great way to explain it because, yeah, I mean, if you were to think about what you thought self-worth was when you were younger, it's probably way, way different.
It was an abstract concept. I couldn't have told you what self-worth was. Yeah.
Probably me either. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I appreciate you sharing all of the things that you did today and for opening yourself up because I know some of our stories are very hard, but it also goes along with my healing is your healing, right? Like you're sharing your story that hopefully will make somebody else learn a little bit about themselves.
Yeah. Stories have a healing
So
power.
they absolutely do. Yeah. So to kind of end up today, the last question that I have for you is what is one piece of advice that you would give to the woman listening now who feels like it's too late for her?
I'm gonna try not to go with the conventional it's not too late. Definitely the one thing to do is to be ready to look into that mirror. I'm going back to what we talked about. To understand that you are going to look and you're going to see a lot of things that you don't like. Kind of like we have knots in our hair, right? When we don't brush it. Maybe you've not been brushing your hair and that's not your fault because you weren't taught how to brush it right. Maybe you made a lot of mistakes. Maybe you didn't hit all those markers that you wanted to hit. But one thing you can do is be ready to look, be ready to know that it is going to hurt you, right? Be ready to open yourself up to support. If you cannot afford to go to therapy to receive coaching, try finding a support group. Surround yourself with people who you feel good and safe with. Seek out people and seek out that human connection. Because if you stay in your head and you stay alone, you are just going to feel like it's a black pit of despair. So even when you feel wounded, seek that connection and seek to share what you feel, what's comfortable for you in that moment, right? But another thing that can help you and that helped me, right, is hearing stories of others, especially if they've gone through the same thing and then they came out on the other side, which people do. And also, what helps me, it helped me then and it's helping me now, is hearing stories of especially women that made it in their later senior years, in their 60s, in their 70s, 80s, 90s. They ran marathons, they taught yoga, they got married to the love of their life, they built orphanages, they did all this insane, cool stuff. And you're sitting there thinking it's too late for you. I would reconsider, right? And it's easy to think, well, I'm not special, she is. And I would go back and think, well, maybe she also had these thoughts at some point. What makes us special, right? What makes us special is what we desire, what we express, and what we're willing to go after. So even if you're going through this awful, awful time, hearing stories of someone who came out on the other end, and especially the women in their 70s, 80s, 90s doing all these insane things, just look at that and look at their joy in life, right? And know that, no, it's not too late. Maybe you will not become, the an elite gymnast if you're 50. Maybe that's possible. I don't know. But who says that you cannot do a lot of other things, right? So stay open and seek out people. Yeah.
I absolutely love that. Be your unique self, right? The world has only made one of you. Don't be a copy of somebody else. Embrace yourself.
Yep.
I love
Exactly.
it. Well, I appreciate you hopping on with me and having a conversation. If you guys want to work with Nina in the future, please reach out to her on LinkedIn, or you can go check out her website. She's got an entire About Me section that kind of goes over her story even more. That's ninalite.com, NINALITE.com. And everything will be posted in the description as well. Any last words, Nina?
Thank you for allowing me to share this story. And thank you for receiving my story with such a kind, loving presence. Appreciate you.
Absolutely. Yeah. It was nice to meet you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. If you're still here, still listening, still feeling that stir inside you, first of all, you're doing it beautifully. These kinds of conversations can be activating because they touch the tender parts of you, but they also bring clarity. And with clarity comes choice. So let's ground this in some tangible next steps, because awareness alone isn't enough. Healing requires practice. It requires structure and gentleness and a way back to yourself that feels safe. So we're going into our toolbox section, and here are 4 practices to help you move from surviving to self-trusting. Tiny ways to begin again. So this first one is called the safe enough check-in. Before making a decision, ask, do I feel safe enough in my body to make this choice from alignment, not fear? Then, once you've given yourself that body scan, ground yourself before responding. Use some kind of body-based anchor like we've talked about before, like placing a hand on your heart, taking a deep breath, or feeling your feet on the floor. Decision-making doesn't need to be instant. You can give yourself a 24-hour buffer if you really need to, because safety precedes clarity. You have to feel okay to be able to give a response that feels aligned. Number 2, self-trust tracker. This is our nervous system edition. So every single day, I want you to jot down one moment where you honored your nervous system. Somewhere where you slowed down, or you said no, or you chose rest instead of movement. And then I want you to track the sensation in your body. Did I feel settled, or clear, soft, or was I agitated and anxious or disconnected? This helps you recognize the patterns. So when you start to feel these things, it builds embodied self-awareness. You can start figuring out what is about to happen and how to slow down or how to make a more aligned decision. Number 3, redefining what strong means. So these are journal prompts. The first one is going to be, who taught me that strength means holding it all together? Number 2, what if strength looked like softness or surrender or asking for help? And finally, number 3, what part of me am I still trying to protect with perfection or control or isolation? And these things are just for awareness. They aren't for necessarily taking action. It's just starting to allow you to recognize what's going on. And number 4, we want to create anchor practices for emotional safety. So I'm going to choose one daily practice to anchor yourself back into safety when you start to feel overwhelmed. And maybe some of these won't work for you. So pick one, once you've tried it, that sticks with you, that you can feel grounded in each time. Maybe it's a 4-7-8 box breathing method. So that's inhaling for 4 counts, holding for 7, and then releasing for 8. And then you start over again. You can name 5 things that you can see, hear, or touch just to ground yourself and your environment. You can listen to a calming playlist, or you can repeat a mantra. Before I can be brave, I need to feel safe. Because when you think about it, safety is our foundation. From there, everything else becomes possible. Before you can speak your truth or set a boundary or make a bold move, your nervous system has to believe that it's okay to do so. If we look at Maslow's hierarchy of needs, safety is not a luxury. It's the bedrock. It's our foundation. And without it, everything else crumbles. So let's take one final breath together. And if this conversation stirred something in you, maybe a quiet ache or a memory, even a small flicker of hope, know this: you are not broken. You've just been in survival mode for too long. And while survival kept you safe, it is not where you're meant to live forever. And what Nina reminded us today is that self-trust isn't something that you force. It's something that you rebuild gently, consistently, and with so much grace. You don't have to overhaul your life in one big dramatic leap. You just need to start choosing differently, one small moment at a time. And before you can be brave, you need to feel safe. And when you build your life from that place, not from urgency, but from inner steadiness, everything starts to change. If this episode moved you, please share it with a friend who's quietly navigating her own rock bottom. Tag me on Instagram at myhealingyourhealing and let me know what part resonated with you the most. And if you're ready to begin rebuilding your life from a place of calm, clarity, or self-trust, I've got free resources on my website and coaching support waiting for you there. You don't have to figure it out all alone. Go to www.myhealingisyourhealing.com and see what we've got in store. Until next time, keep showing up, keep growing, and remember, you were never meant to dim your light. Thanks for tuning in and being here, for healing out loud, and for walking this path beside me. If this episode cracked something open or helped you remember a part of yourself, pass it on and share it with someone you love. For more support, free resources, or the next steps to your journey, head over to my website, myhealingisyourhealing.com. And if you loved today's conversation, subscribe, rate, and leave a review. Your words help this space grow and help more women find their way home to themselves. If I was your muse today, then my healing is your healing. Until next time.